The film begins in the deserts of Mongolia, the largest desert in East Asia. In the middle of this desert, a company had arrived intending to extract oil, but their information turned out to be incorrect. There was no oil here. As a result, they decided to leave, and a plane was sent to take them back. The pilot of this plane was named Frank, accompanied by his co-pilot. All the workers gathered their belongings and boarded the plane, setting off for their city, Beijing. However, shortly into their journey, a massive storm began to brew. Seeing this, Frank's co-pilot suggested they land the plane temporarily and take off again once the storm had passed. Frank refused to listen, and as a result, they got caught in the storm. They tried to communicate via radio but were unable to get through. During this time, one of the engines malfunctioned, and Frank prepared for an emergency landing despite having no clear visibility ahead. As the plane descended, its rear end struck a rock, causing the back door to open and one worker to fall out, resulting in his death. The plane then skidded across the desert sand until it came to a stop. Inside, 2 more workers had died. Now stranded in this dangerous desert, they checked their food supplies and discovered they had enough to last a month. At that moment, one man claimed he could walk out of the desert because he had extensive hiking and trekking experience in many places. However, the others cautioned him that it was July, the hottest month in the desert, and he wouldn't survive the heat. They also reminded him that he didn't know the way, so he would end up wandering in circles. The man understood their concerns. That night, as everyone slept, the weather worsened due to the storm. One man named John Davis went outside to use the toilet. He accidentally kicked a stone, fell into the sand, and got lost in the storm as visibility dropped to 0. The next morning, when the workers woke up, they found one of their companions missing. They searched everywhere, but found no trace of him. The woman among them approached the pilot and asked if anyone was coming to rescue them. The pilot replied that he had no idea, which saddened her because they were completely lost. If someone came searching for them, they wouldn't be able to find them. Hope began to fade among the group, as it seemed no one would come to rescue them. 2 of them decided to try to walk out of the desert, but when they started packing water, the pilot told them no one would take water from the plane. This led to an argument, causing the water to spill. At that moment, a man named Elliot spoke up with an idea to save them all. He said he had been observing the plane for several days and believed they could rebuild another plane by using parts from this one. Elliot had previously worked with a plane manufacturing company. This gave everyone a glimmer of hope, and they were ready to help. However, the pilot disagreed, saying it was impossible. The next day, one man left the group, but the woman tried to follow him. The pilot stopped her and went after the man himself. He reached the rock where their plane had crashed and found the body of the man who had fallen from the plane. However, the body was missing its clothes, and there were some bullet casings nearby. Then the pilot encountered the man who had left and said he had come to retrieve his watch, which the deceased had taken from him, but the watch was not on the body, which clearly meant that besides them, someone else was out there as well. Now both of them arrive at the place where their other companions are, and the pilot also agrees to help them build the plane. After this, they begin constructing the plane. They don't work during the day because it's extremely hot there. Instead, they work at night. However, their trouble increases when sparks fall onto the oil they had stored for igniting the fire and flying the plane while welding, causing a huge explosion. Fortunately, no one is hurt in the blast, but all their oil is wasted. Now they have just enough oil left for one flight to get away from there. They start working during the day instead of at night, despite the intense heat, but they don't lose courage and begin working again. As they start rebuilding the plane, it becomes necessary to attach a wing. They have only one chance. If the wing falls, they won't be able to build the plane again because they don't have another one. They carefully lower the wing from the top, but suddenly the chain holding the wing breaks. The wing scrapes along the ground and crashes straight into the plane. Everyone is shocked to see this. Inside the plane is one of their friends whose job was to attach the wing to the board. When the wing falls, he comes out and says, "I have finished the job." In fact, the wing landed exactly where it needed to be, completing the plane's structure. Now, everyone hopes they can take off from here. They celebrate, dance, and enjoy themselves, while also clearing the desert sand to prepare a runway for the plane to take off. But nothing is easy. One day, a dangerous electrical storm arrives with lightning striking around. Since there is petrol inside the wing, everyone runs away from there, except for Elliot. He wants to make sure the plane stays safe. When lightning is about to strike him, Frank pulls him down, saving his life. If anything had happened to Elliot, no one would have been able to finish the plane. Now they name their plane Phoenix. Phoenix is a creature from Egyptian mythology that is reborn from the desert and is considered very powerful. Still, they have a lot of work left to do on the plane. Slowly, their water supply also starts running low. One night, they see some tents in the distance where some people are sleeping. These people are actually smugglers who supply weapons through the desert route. Frank suggests they should ask the smugglers for water, but Elliot refuses. Nevertheless, Frank and some others go to the smugglers. Frank and his friend hide behind a rock so they can attack if anything goes wrong. The smugglers have guns. When they ask for water, one smuggler shoots one of their men. Frank and his friend immediately fire back, killing some smugglers, but one injured smuggler manages to escape. Frank has a chance to kill him, but doesn't shoot because he doesn't want to become a killer. James notices one of the dead smugglers wearing a watch. It's the same watch that belonged to their friend who died falling from the plane. This means these smugglers had been here before. They bring the injured smuggler back to their plane. Some suggest killing him, but Frank refuses. While there is an argument among them, Elliot suddenly shoots the smuggler. This sparks a fight between Frank and Elliot. Elliot blames Frank, saying, "You were the pilot. Because of you, we are stuck here. Because of you, one of our friends died. I told you not to go, but you went anyway." Hearing this, Frank gets angry and punches Elliot hard. Now Elliot gets angry because his ego is hurt. He says, "I'm not going to build the plane anymore. I've done as much work as I needed to. I work as hard as 10 people here, and all of you just relax." Kelly comes to him and says, "We can't build this plane without you. We need you." Elliot replies, "Only if everyone asks me will I start working again." Then everyone, even Frank, asks him. Frank says, "You are the boss here. Please complete this work." Elliot agrees, and together they all start working on building the plane again. One day, through a telescope, they see that the smuggler who had escaped has now returned with his friends. But they don't advance because they know these people now have their weapons. The smugglers realize their water and food will run out soon, and when they get weak, the smugglers will attack. This motivates them to work even faster, and finally, their work is complete. Then Frank finds a magazine featuring models of various kinds of planes and discovers that Elliot had designed the plane by looking at these toy models. In fact, Elliot used to build small flying model planes, but had never built a real, large plane before. Hearing this makes everyone angry, especially Ian, who puts a gun to Elliot's head and says, "You were fooling us. This plane will never fly. You've never built such a big plane before." But Elliot says, "I'm sure this plane will fly. Yes, I used to make small remote-controlled planes, but balance is even more important in those." Frank stops Ian just then, and a storm hits. When the strong winds blow, the plane starts to lift lightly into the air on its own. Everyone realizes that this plane can truly fly. The hope that had died in their hearts springs back to life. But this was a desert storm that completely buried the plane in sand. After the storm, everyone feels downhearted. Frank says, "We worked so hard on this, and we'll fly it away from here." Together, they dig the plane out of the sand and drag it to a spot where there is no sand. They start the plane. It starts, but immediately stops. After many attempts, the plane finally runs. The engine roars. Hearing the noise, the smugglers charge towards them, on horseback, weapons drawn. Everyone climbs onto the plane and hangs onto the wings. The plane's design doesn't have a place to sit inside. They had made a small plane from parts of a bigger plane. The plane races down the runway with smugglers firing bullets behind them, but nobody gets hit. As the runway ends, the smugglers think they have won, but in the next moment, their Phoenix plane flies out of the ravine. Everyone rejoices in happiness. After months of hard work, they have finally succeeded. This is how they escaped the deadly desert where getting out alive seemed impossible. Elliot's photo is published in a magazine with the caption, "NASA's New Hope."